Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. It's your boy Kevin Thornton. You have tuned into the Wellness Architect Show. Today is Monday, February 17th, 2020. It's a real gloomy day in Atlanta, but it's going to be a great day regardless. First, I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for all the birthday wishes for the birthday show. I truly appreciate it. I'm still trying to return everybody's birthday wish. I was overwhelmed with all the love and attention. I truly appreciate it. We um, you got me messed up.
We love you, Kevin.
Thank you. Tonight's gonna be a great show. We have an amazing lady on it today. She's gonna do something really good in the state of Georgia. This is somebody that Miss Lotus knows very well. So what I'm gonna do is throw it to Lotus, our lovely co-host. She'll give you a word of the day, and I'll let her introduce our great guest for tonight. How you doing, ma'am?
Hey, Kevin. Happy birthday again. It was great to be in the studio the day before your birthday. It was amazing, amazing turnout. And I can only imagine the birthday wishes that you're getting. You probably getting offers to come all over to Australia and everywhere else on the planet. And that's great because you deserve it because you're always doing something to help somebody else be the best version of themselves. So thank you so much. So the word of the day is magnetic. And typically, if you go to the dictionary and you look up the word magnetic, magnetic means that it will draw, it will attract and cling to. So the question today is what are you clinging to? Are you a magnetic entrepreneur? Are you a magnetic employee? Do you attract positivity in your employment? Do you attract positivity in whatever line of business that you're in? And if you're not in a line of business, if you're a stay at home mom or stay at home dad, or if you're retired, or even if you work at Walmart greeting people, and that's a super important vocation, are you magnetizing people to you to help themselves be the best version of themselves that they could be through a simple word that you might say, something simple as hello? So that's the question. Are you being magnetic? Are you magnetizing and are you leveraging the universe to help you be the best person you can be? Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank
So
you.
today, I would love to introduce you to Georgia's very own magnificent lady. She is a senator hopeful, and she is coming to us today to tell us that we as Georgians, and I say we as Georgians, many of you know that I live in DC right now, but I lived in Augusta, Georgia, or Hephzibah, Georgia, for a number of years. And it's been a long time since I've seen anyone come through with this amount of fire, with this amount of stick to itiveness, and this amount of passion to help people, whether you're on the street and homeless, or whether you're in a home and trying to explore your options to make things better in the state of Georgia. Ceretta Anita Smith is the person that you want to definitely check out. And I don't care who you cast your vote for, but her thought is make sure you cast your vote because it's very important. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Evening. How are
Good
you?
evening. Doing great.
I'm so
Oh.
excited and happy to be here. Thank you for thinking of me, and thank Kevin for thinking enough of you, for thinking of me to have me on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are definitely delighted to have you. I know that you have a super busy schedule. I know you were up in DC for a while, doing some things with a number of wonderful lawmakers in this nation. And we really appreciate you coming. So tonight, we just want to give you our stage and let you talk about some of the things that are so passionate for you and to Georgians, because Georgians want change and sustainable change, and you are the person who is making the difference to bring it to fruition. So thank you for coming. So Kev, I'm happy you got to meet her.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm just going to step back and let you answer the first question because I already got a couple of questions for her.
Okay.
We're going to make her work a little hard tonight.
All right. So, what is the foundation of your platform on for your you running for state senator?
So, one of the things that state senators are responsible for doing is representing the interests of the people in their district, especially when they're considering legislation at the state level. And we hope that our state senators are supporting legislation that is going to improve the lives of their constituents. So, one of the areas that I'm really, really concerned about is healthcare. If you look across the United States, there is a healthcare crisis, specifically in rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
In my district, much of the district is what you would consider rural areas. We have 11 counties, and out of those 11 counties, some of those counties don't have a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't have specialty care doctors
Mm-hmm.
like an OBGYN doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So for women who live in those areas that may have high risk pregnancies, or when it's time for them to deliver their babies, they have to travel 45 minutes to an hour to get proper care or to have labor and delivery.
Mm-hmm.
That's not safe for mom. That's not safe for babies. We have a lot of elderly people in those rural areas. They can't drive, they don't have transportation. So, traveling 35 minutes to an hour for healthcare, that is not good for them. Healthcare needs to be not only affordable but accessible. So, we're seeing in the rural areas there's a problem with accessibility in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. One of the things is the GOP has refused to expand Medicaid. So I think we need to work together in a bipartisan way. That means Democrats and Republicans. We need to put aside party because there's nothing more precious and valuable than human life. Party shouldn't even be a discussion when you're talking about the difference between life and death in some of these areas because people don't have proper health care and they don't have health care that's accessible. So I'm really, really passionate about that. Education. I believe in funding public schools. Our children are our future. We need to invest in them. We need to make sure that teachers and principals and administrators have the resources that they need to ensure that every child in Georgia, again, in the rural areas as well, is getting a quality education. What people don't understand is that education is an equalizer and a stabilizer, and studies have shown that education helps to break the cycles of poverty. And specifically in rural areas, there's those cycles of poverty that continue because of lack of education. So we want to make sure that we're not cutting the budget when it comes to education. We're putting more money into public education because we want our children to have quality education. I am passionate about sex and human trafficking. I have friends who were in sex and human trafficking that were rescued out of it. I myself, as a young girl, was almost abducted. And so some of my friends now have organizations where they rescue people out of sex and human trafficking, and then they provide housing and resources and services to help them overcome the trauma. So First Lady Kemp, the governor's wife, she has an initiative for sex and human trafficking. I was really excited to see them pass some type of initiative for that. And last but not least, I am a United States Army veteran. Whoa! And whoa! I hear you, Lotus. Whoa! I love the Navy. I think they are hoorah, and the Marines are hoorah. I don't know what the Navy says. The Air Force says fly high, and my Coast Guard brothers and sisters. So I am very, very, very passionate about anything that deals with veterans. I know that a lot of things, legislation and funding for veterans is done at a federal level, but I believe that here in the state of Georgia, there are things that we can do to make sure that our veterans are not homeless. We talked before the show about the tiny home project that I would love to see happen in my district. We also talked about
Yes.
before the show. I talked today on another show about making sure that we have secondary services in place for our veterans that may have behavioral and mental health care crises. And I think we need to support our veteran spouses. Many times when spouses come into the state, they have licensures and they have to cut through a lot of red tape to get their licensures transferred here to Georgia, and it causes them to go for long periods of time without employment. So
Yes.
I want us to do things to incentivize our soldiers and service members to come and live in Georgia, to stay in Georgia, to spend their money in Georgia, to have their leisure in Georgia. When people hear, when veterans hear about Georgia, I want them to know that Georgia takes such great care of its veterans. So those are a few of the things. I didn't mean to be so long-winded.
No.
That I'm extremely passionate about, and I look forward to working with others in the state legislature to help see some of those things come to fruition.
No, this is your platform today to tell us what you are about, so the listeners can know who to vote for and why. I want to piggyback off of one thing first, though. The healthcare issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Um, I used to work for a health insurance company, so I'm very aware of people who live in rural areas having little to no access to doctors. So a lot of times, the people in the rural areas would go to the ER as their way of going to the doctor because they don't have a doctor in that area. So that's concerning to me, where you don't have a doctor in your area. So the only thing you could do to be seen is to go to the ER. So that's a big issue for me.
And that causes the ERs to be overcrowded
Yep.
and overburdened with large numbers of people. I think we need to do things to incentivize doctors, especially those coming fresh out of medical school,
Hmm.
to come into the rural areas. I know there are programs for teachers that are fresh out of school, from the classroom to stripes, or teachers to
Hmm.
stripes. Or there's programs for military folks that are coming out of the military, where they have these programs where if you come and you teach in certain areas for X amount of years, they will pay off your student loans.
Right.
So I think we need to get creative
Mm-hmm.
in coming up with ways to magnetize, to attract
Yes.
um, doctors to come into the rural areas and to serve the people in those areas. Everybody is not going to move into the big city. Everybody's not going to live, out of the country lines and come into the city. But we deserve in America to have affordable and accessible health care.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
I concur with you. And let me add that as you know, we've had this discussion before. I worked for Kodak for a number of years in their clinical market, and I worked in hospitals and in the rural areas of Georgia where I serviced blood analyzers, and I taught the doctors how to utilize the analyzers and how to look at the assay values and all those things. And I can remember days when I would go into the rural areas of Georgia like Barnwell and places up past the Hepzibah area. And they had these little doctor's offices, and oftentimes they were in like a trailer. Because the towns were just so small. If you drove through the town and there was one stoplight, you was doing good. You was doing great, really, if there was a stoplight, and you were just doing good if there was a stop sign. And so many people had trouble getting to care. And I wanted to kind of take a moment to read this document that I came across that was done talking about the crisis here in the United States with healthcare. And this document came to me by way of a magazine or a newspaper called The Guardian. Okay, and The Guardian listed a document in the newspaper, and this is what it read. It says millions of Americans, as many as 25% of the population, are dying getting or delaying getting medical help because of skyrocketing costs. And Susan Finley returned to her job at a Walmart retail store in Grand Junction, Colorado, after having to call in sick because she was recovering from pneumonia. The day she returned, the 53-year-old received her 10-year association award and was simultaneously laid off. According to her family, she had taken off one day beyond what is permitted by Walmart's attendance policy. After losing her job in May 2016, Finley also lost her health insurance coverage and she struggled to find a new job. 3 months later, Finley was found dead in her apartment after avoiding going to see a doctor for flu-like symptoms. And basically, the article goes on, and you can read that article. Um, and it talks about the disparity between having health insurance and knowing that it's okay to go. And then also, what about calling off from work because you're sick? Because many Americans don't want to call off. So let's look at the rural areas. These people oftentimes do not have access to a physician. They may have access to a physician's assistant or what have you, or they have to drive over 20 or 30 miles, which is the case in many of the rural areas that I had witnessed living in Georgia. And oftentimes they're elderly and they cannot drive the distance, or they don't have anybody who can leave their job to go take them to healthcare. So this is an epidemic that is national. It's not just in rural areas, but the staggering numbers in rural areas is just that. It's staggering and it's overwhelming. And today I'm hearing you say, as you've said before, Ceretta, that you want to help this to not be an issue in 2020 and going forward. And that's a critical thing. So thank you for your passion for that.
Yeah, as a federal government, former federal government employee and union president, I assisted a lot of people with Family Medical Leave Act. And I too have seen people, I used to tell supervisors, no one wakes up and says, you know what, I think I want cancer today.
Right.
You know what? Life happens to people, and it can happen to any of us. We pray to God that it doesn't happen to us, but life, it could happen to me, it could happen to my children, it could be my mother. And so life happens to all of us. And we don't need to forget that, it may not be you today, but it could be you tomorrow. And I think that we need to have more compassion. We need to have more understanding. We need to get back to humanity. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. And it is so unfortunate. I have seen that happen countless times to people where they are sick and their FMLA has run out and management says, farewell, see you later. And I understand about mission and making sure that you have enough personnel to accomplish whatever it is, whatever types of services that you provide. But I think we can find other ways to help people keep their health insurance, to help people stay employed, and to help them through those hard times. There's a song that says, trouble don't last always.
Yes.
So it's not an always situation. It's just, I'm going through a hard time in life right now, and I just need somebody to help me. And that's what healthcare is all about. It's about helping people through difficult times, helping them recover, helping them be well, have wellness and wholeness. And so, I want to definitely partner with other legislators, and we need to sit down, we need to talk to the people, and we need to figure it out.
Yeah. And Kevin can attest to this as well, and I know you can attest to this, and we want to tell all of our viewers, it's the simple parts of healthcare that when that one simple part drops out, so many other dynamics take place. And as you know, I've worked with people where I was working for a counseling firm in Augusta, Georgia. I had a client in Trenton, Georgia, of course. And unfortunately, his health care coverage kind of ran out for me as a clinician that was seeing him. And when it ran out, they kind of sent someone else over from the company that I worked with where their coverage covered him. And the thing was that the patient felt a sense of abandonment. The patient was having some mental illness. He was a cutter. And since I was no longer there, he tried to suicide. And it's hard because the thing is, Where's the person that was here? And it's beyond my control. And
Right.
sometimes it's beyond the control of the clinicians.
Right.
So you're dropping these people off that need the help the most, and you're expecting them to survive. Well, they can't just survive when the healthcare is not there. We want to do more than just survive. We want to help people thrive. And that's one of the big reasons that we wanted Ceretta here tonight. So, with that being said, I want to tell you that we have several people on here tonight, and they're here especially to hear what you have to say. So, Daisy out of North Augusta, good to see you. We have Dr. Sandra Brooks out of Augusta, Georgia. We have Terrence Leffridge. Terrence Leffridge, all the way. I think Terrence is just out of Florida, just relocated. Yo Boy Kush, of course, is here. Elizabeth Hope Brown is watching. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we have a comment. Oh my goodness. And Kanan Harper is watching all the way out of Detroit. So you have got people watching from all over the place. But Dr. Sandra Brooks did want to make a comment. And she said that the unfortunate thing is that it is not only in rural areas where people use the ER as their primary health care giver, that happens in clients as well, because people do not have health care and cannot afford urgent care. So can either one of you relate to that?
Mm-hmm. That's what she said is very true. Um, Even in the big cities, if they don't have any healthcare services, they will go to the ER because it's easy to go to ER, especially if it's an ER that is like a community hospital, that they could go there and get seen, other than try and go to urgent care where they got to pay money. And if they don't have the money, they can't be seen. So that is very true.
Yes.
And I
And
see
then
a
it
lot.
also causes burnout too in
Yeah.
the ER.
Yep.
The doctors are burned out, the nurses are burned out. And it's almost like, okay, they can't go to their own private physician, then they go to the ER, and oftentimes, because I am a witness and this happened to me, you go to the ER and you get substandard health care. And now I got to say this, and I hate to say this, but I went to the VA hospital and there was something going on with me and I did not know what. And the doctor had the audacity to say, unless you've been beat up, there's nothing really I can do for you. Now, I had no feeling in my toes. Okay. So I had no sensation. My thing is, you never want to tell a patient that. You always want to give them help. And my thought was, how dare you? Being
Absolutely.
a military veteran who has
Absolutely.
served this country,
Yes.
you go to the VA hospital and you get that. And mind you, I serviced all the hospitals in the Augusta area and nearby areas, some nearby areas as well. So can you imagine? Some people are not going to go to get health care basically because of those reasons. So how can we help the doctors and the nurses feel better and have more help and stuff like that? Again, it's got to be a way that we can enhance the healthcare so that everybody has it across the board, so that they don't burn out the people in the ER as well.
Right, absolutely. We need to have those conversations. It's not something that's going to, you're going to wave a magic wand and it's all going to be solved. It's not something that we're going to sit down and have a brainstorming or a strategy session and we're going to come up with all the answers at one time. It took us a while to get into this mess. And
Yes.
so I think it's going to take us some time to get out of it, but we have to start.
Right.
And one of the ways that we can start is by expanding Medicaid. It's money that the federal government has given to the state, and
Yes.
Georgia is one of few states that has not taken advantage of those resources. So those are resources that can help us. So we've got to work in a bipartisan manner to expand Medicaid and then come to the table and start coming up with solutions and ways that we're going to, the doctor said, not just in rural areas, but all across the United States of America, in big cities as well, making sure that people have access and that it's affordable.
Yes. course. And Daisy also said that, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Daisy also said that she said the ER where she lives, she said it's really not good. She said she has to go all the way to Augusta to get better care. And Daisy suffers with some chronic illness. And so can you imagine having to drive all the way to Augusta, which is about a 35-minute, 40-minute drive to get the health care that needs and deserves? It's got to be overwhelming. It's got to be scary to be in that position.
Sometimes it's literally the difference between life and death.
So I would like to, if I may, those of you that like what you're hearing Mrs. Smith say, if you like what you're hearing her say, go ahead and put in number one down. Put in number one down and let her know that you like what you're hearing her say. Okay? And then if you really, really like what you're hearing her say, type the word out, vote, because your vote matters. And Michael Freeland is watching. Thank you, Michael Freeland, for joining us. So Kevin, I thought I heard Mrs. Smith say that she talked a little bit about human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And Kevin and I have talked in length about human trafficking, about the epidemic that seems to be going on, one globally, but most recently it's come closer to home. Mm-hmm. So Kevin, what are your thoughts on the human trafficking piece, if we could shift there for a moment?
I think it's a really big issue, especially here in Atlanta. With Atlanta being the largest airport in the United States, probably across the world, that's a major issue for human trafficking. So that is an issue I think that really need to put a lot of focus in. So for me to hear her saying that she's something that she want to focus on, I think is very, very important. And I know she said that why it's passionate for her is she had some friends that were, trafficked, and also she almost had that issue. So I just want her to elaborate, how did she get away with that? How did she get away from it? And how did her friends get away from it? And what do you think is what we could do to alleviate that?
So when I don't know if I'm not sure how old you are. I don't want to tell my age. No, I'm over 50. I'm proud.
Okay. 22.
So you should remember back. I can't remember if it was in the 70s or the 80s. The Atlanta, when the children in Atlanta were being abducted and killed. And so there was like a overall fear across the nation. And one day my grandmother lived around the corner, not very far at all. And I used to walk to her house all the time. And I was coming back from her home and I was walking down the street. I was almost to my house and a man pulled up in a canary yellow station wagon. I still remember it, Kevin. I still remember it. And he pulled up beside me and I froze. And we looked eye to eye, and I something inside of me told me he's going to grab you. And I know now, that was the Spirit of God at that time. I didn't know that then. And the voice said, run. And so I took off running. And as I was running, he was riding alongside me, trying to catch up with me. And I could see the back door of my house. And I knew that if I could just get to the back door and bang on the door, I would be okay. So I made it to the back door. I banged on the back door. My mother opened the back door. I was crying. She locked eyes with him. She came out to try to get his license plate number. And he sped around and he got away. But I've never forgotten that moment. Fast forward, we're living in Germany and we were there and there was a military family there, and they had a nanny. And they helped this young girl. She was from England. Now, she was in Germany, and she had been sex trafficked and human trafficked. and they helped to rescue her out of human and sex trafficking. And she ended up becoming my son's nanny, and we became very close. And so she currently lives in New York, and she has an organization called GEMS. She came to the States and she formed this organization. And so what she does now is she helps to rescue people out of sex and human trafficking. She has homes and houses and things where they safe houses where they come, and she helps to help them get the care, physical care, mental care, health care, counseling, and she follows them until they come overcome the trauma and they're able to get back out and become productive citizens. And so just knowing her, loving her, hearing her story, knowing other folks who have been trafficked in prostitution. I've seen so many things, and it's horrific. And it's sad to say that a lot of your rich CEOs of companies, your politicians, a lot of these people are involved in human and sex trafficking. And so we need to, just like First Lady Kemp, the legislation and the initiative that she passed where they put more money, they've started these task force. I think we need more task force that they can go undercover. They have these undercover stings, and they're able to burst up these large sex trafficking rings. And you have doctors and lawyers and youth pastors, and the demographics of the people that are actually involved. You wouldn't think it was your neighbor down the street. That's the Sunday school teacher, but his name, he was one of the people, whose picture is plastered. So we need to educate. Not only do we need to increase funding, form more task force, we need to start educating our children in schools. We need to have some type of curriculums where we are teaching about this. We need to educate our teachers. We need to educate people in airports. I think it should be, especially for airports and train stations, any mode of transportation. I think that should be a part of their new employee orientation, recognizing sex trafficking, human trafficking. What do you do if you believe you see someone who is being sex or human trafficked? Those are just a few of the ideas that I have, but I think if we can sit down and have some conversations and actually talk to some of these people that have lived it, they can give us a lot more insight into how these organizations run, what to look for, where to look. And so that's one of the things that's important to me, is like, it always goes back to talking to the people. You got to talk to the people. You have to talk to the people.
All right. So I wanted to go into education. And I think that's very important, especially for our community. Like you said, education will help you get out of poverty. A lot of times, because you could learn skills and trades that can help monetize your lifestyle, that can get you out of poverty, as long as you also get out of the poverty mindset. But with that being said, how can we fix this? Because even in the Atlanta area, it's not fair with the money. So you could be like, you could live in Fulton County, and you could be North Fulton, which is like Johns Creek, Roswell, all them more richer areas, and the school districts are amazing. They're like the top schools in the area. But then you got South Fulton, which is like Atlanta and the other cities, and they don't get the same type of education. How is that? And what would you propose for something like that, even in rural areas?
Kevin, it comes back to who's sitting at the table speaking on those people's behalf. And if you don't have anyone that has a seat at the table, then you don't have a voice. And what we've got to do is, especially in the African American community, We have got to utilize the power of our voice, which is our vote, and we have to elect people that look like us, that have our interest, that can relate, that understand what our struggles are, and we have to give them a seat at the table. Because if no one's at the table to speak up for you when they're at, allotting the funds and saying what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, then you don't have a voice. You don't have a voice. You have no say in what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you have to make sure that you elect someone that's not afraid to speak truth to power, that's not afraid to say, look, these people have been disenfranchised. You've forgotten about them long enough. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to get in your face, and I'm going to make you do right by not just some of the children here in Georgia, but we're going to take care of all the children in Georgia. And so you have to be able to do that, but you have to have the people standing behind you, backing you. And that comes with the power of the vote. That's why we got to get out and we got to turn the vote out. We have got to get up and we have got to get registered to vote, and we have got to get out to vote, and we've got to let our voices be heard. Because in my capacity as a union president, when I have had these opportunities to sit at the table, and I understand, oh, so this is how this works. If there's nobody here at the table to speak on my behalf, then I'm forgotten about. And so that's what's going to have to happen. That's what it's going to take.
All right. Lotus, you got anything? I can keep on going, but you have any questions, Lotus? Oh, she must be gone. But I'll keep on going. So my question to you is, what you say is very true about we have to vote, but how can we change our community's mindset about voting? Because right now, when you talk to any person, all thing they're concerned about is getting Trump out of office. But we fail to realize that we got other things we got to focus on too, because we just focus on getting him out of office, but we're not really taking the time to be educated on what's going on within our state. We could fail on that too. So what would you say to the audience about that?
It's interesting that you brought that up, because the Women League of Voters, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, and this is the 100th year anniversary of the women's suffrage. And we were at the mall this weekend, the Women League of Voters were at the mall this weekend, and I went out to volunteer, and there were registering people to vote. And if you are 17 and a half, then you are eligible to register to vote. And there was a beautiful young lady who was eligible to vote, to register to vote. And what she responded was, there's not a presidential candidate that I'm interested in, so I don't need to vote. And so I walked up to her and I said, what would you like to do when you graduate? And she said, I want to be a lawyer. I said, so you want to be an attorney? I said, well, guess what? You should be running to sign up to vote, because as an attorney, you want to have a district attorney that's going to be fair, tough but fair, a district attorney that understands that putting people in jail is not always the answer. And so I began to explain to her, there are more elections than just the presidential election. You have your local elections. I went to see the movie Just Mercy. I had no idea that district attorneys and judges were that powerful at the local level. In your city, I had no idea they had that much power. So oftentimes, you're right, Kevin, our local elections are overlooked. So we get district attorneys who are, from the pipeline to prison, or the prison to the pipeline. I forget how it goes.
Right.
But they're not looking out for the best interest of our African American men, or Black and brown people. You have judges, you have your city councilman, you have your school board folks. So educating, again, it goes back to educating people we're not going to change everybody's mind. But once I explained that to that young lady, guess what she did?
She
She
registered for.
walked over that table and she registered to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's grassroots, it's organizing, it's mobilizing, it's getting out, it's setting up tables wherever you can, it's in front of businesses, it's going into churches, it's going into high schools. It's going to require a deep commitment, passion, and work from people who are committed to. And I explained to her and a group of young ladies, I said, y'all, 100 years ago, women didn't even have the right to vote. I said, and now we have the right, and you're gonna tell me that you're not gonna register to vote? Not on my watch. Let's go. I told a couple of them, you're gonna respect your elders today. Come on, let's go. And jokingly, but I walked them around because they didn't know anything about the women's suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, really? Women couldn't? Yes. 100 years ago, we couldn't vote. And so they were just in awe. So I think
I think that's part of the problem is that such as the new generations, we fail to
yes,
bring our history down.
yes,
We can't rely on the school system to do it. So it's up to us and the families to have those conversations of why is it important to educate us on the different things, so then we'll understand why it's so important to them and why it should be important to us to vote. But we're not passing down that information. So you get young girls like them that you saw that doesn't have a clue because they take it for granted because they don't know no different. And that means we have to take some kind of ownership and be like, we're not educating our children.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
We spend a lot of time wanting them to have a better life than we did, and showering them with things, and because not necessarily that we struggled, or you may have struggled, but we wanted them to have a better life, and so I spent a lot of time giving them things, and wanting them to enjoy some of the things that we didn't enjoy, and but it's not too late.
Right.
It's not too late.
Right. And I just think if everybody was like you and me and went to go see Just Mercy,
Yeah.
if they sit there and watch that movie, then it will make you want to vote.
Yes.
Yes.
It was powerful. I had no idea that, and I said it now, that a district attorney and that judges had that kind of power.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure, we need to be careful. We need to know who we're giving that power to.
Exactly.
I concur.
We
Yeah. Daisy had, and I'm sorry I couldn't respond earlier, folks. There was something going on with my mic in the studio. But Daisy had a point, and she said, yeah, in New York, there was a guy bailed out on his own, and he was from another country. And the judges, evidently he was sex trafficking or human trafficking, and the judges let him out. And what Daisy was saying is, the judges have to do a better job with crime in sentencing these type of people. And so it goes back to your point. You have to be cognizant of making sure that you vote, because your vote does count. But sometimes when we are lulled to sleep, we don't realize that our vote has such power. That cliche, divided we stand, united we stand, divided we fall. That is so true. And we've got to get out there and vote. And something that I wanted to add to your point, when you talked about the trafficking, a lot, and you touched on certain portions of the trafficking, but I wanted to let people know this. I worked for the Department of Defense, and one of the primary things that they make sure that we know is about trafficking, so that we are cognizant no matter where we're traveling throughout the world, so that we don't put ourselves in certain situations. And sometimes you don't have to put yourself in a situation. People will bring a situation to you because you're the one that they want to traffic. So be sure to know this. And this information that I'm giving you right now, this information comes from DoSomething.org, and it talks about the 11 facts. So you can go on DoSomething.org after the broadcast and check this out. Trafficking involves more than just you standing at school and somebody takes you. Basically, it includes forced labor, marriage. It forces people into marriage, prostitution, and organ removal. And this is a type of exploitation that's happening globally. And the statistics state that it's estimated that internationally there are 20 to 40 million people in what they call modern slavery today, because that's a part of trafficking too. They call it modern slavery as well. And here, right here in the United States, it's estimated that at least 50,000 people are trafficked into the US each year, most often from Mexico and the Philippines. And now these are not statistics that I drew up. These are statistics that right now are coming from DoSomething.org. And then also, you want to remember what Mrs. Smith said about some of the people that we hold so near and dear. Even right now, the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, okay, he was busted in a Florida prostitution bust where obviously people were being trafficked into that for prostitution. So again, we have got to be cognizant of who we're following. We can't think just because a person is a leader that they're doing everything right. We've got to make sure we look at who we're voting into office. Also look at our doctors and our lawyers and people who own huge companies, because that does not place them above the fray.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
So did you have any questions for her, Lotus?
Yes, let me go back. Okay, so here we go.
Hold that thought.
Sure.
Hold that thought for your question. But I know you have something important to tell us in the 8 o'clock hour, and it's that time. So can you please make your announcement to the world?
Kevin be on time with 2 minutes to spare. Okay, all right. So this past week, and first and foremost, I want to thank you for saying that. And I want to thank everybody that comes week to week and participates in our cast. And I want to share with you all that this weekend, I was a part of an official attempt for the Guinness Book of World Records. This is my actual armband. Mr. Robert J. Moore, he is just a brilliant mind. He's a author, a #1 international best-selling author, and he wanted to help people help themselves to really ignite and take flight. And so 126 authors gathered together to make international history and became members of the Guinness Book of World Records. And I was one of those authors with this wonderful book called The Magnetic Entrepreneur. Okay, I am one of the co-authors with 125 other authors, and we skyrocketed to a #1 best-selling international book. So it was amazing. The energy was high. It was just phenomenal. And you can go here on Amazon. You can buy this book. You can contact me direct and buy this book. It's called The Magnetic Entrepreneurs. And we had people chiming in, Sylvester Stallone. We had just so many different people, so many people, and even the president signed off on the book. So just some amazing people just chimed in, and I'm really grateful and I'm thankful to have been a part of setting history in Canada and the United States internationally. So thank you for allowing me to share that. And I wanted to say to all of you out there, those of you that are not voting, those of you that are changing your mind and voting, remember to do that. Why? Because you need to be magnetic about whatever you do. And whatever you put out, you can draw back to you. There were days years and years ago, and I guess even now, that people would say there would be no way that a woman that looks just like me, that's sitting right here on this show, could be a senator. But we have overcome the statistics. He is a person who could have been trafficked. I am a person who could have been trafficked. And I shared that with Ceretta. She and I had the opportunity to have lunch and we've shared our stories. And I got to tell you, if we could overcome,
Yes.
if we could move into our brilliance, so can you. So thank you, Kevin, for letting me share that. I appreciate it.
No problem. So now go ahead with your question, ma'am.
Okay, so the question for you, let me go back down to it. The question for you is this. As a person living in Georgia, having not been from Georgia originally, what do you bring to the table to set Georgia apart, links and bounds, because of knowledge that you have from being born in another state?
So I think that, as I was saying today in an interview that I did, Georgia is growing in leaps and bounds. Economically, it's growing. It's going to continue to grow, but it's also becoming very diverse. It's becoming a very diverse place, and I think that our legislators should look like the people that they represent. So I think our legislators should be a diverse group of people. And sometimes when you come in from the outside, you can bring a different perspective, a fresh perspective, a different view, a vantage point. And I think my experiences as a United States Army veteran, having traveled the world literally, and lived in many different places with all different types of people. I think my experiences as a federal government employee, again, having traveled the world and working with all different types of people from all walks of life, it gives me the ability to be able to bring something fresh and different to the table. I think it's important to be able to connect with people, have communication skills, and also listening skills.
Right.
Sometimes politicians like to do a lot of talking, but they don't like to sometimes just sit down and just listen to the people. And so I think I will bring a energy
Yes.
and a synergy, but also a fresh perspective to the state senate and to the district. And I believe in some ways I've already done that, and now I just want to do it from another level, and I'm excited about that.
Awesome. So one thing I heard you say is that you want to bring a fresh perspective. I didn't hear you say, well, I want to change them because their way is old. And I didn't hear you say that. And that's great, because a lot of times, I lived in Hefzibah for a long time, Hefzibah, Georgia. And oftentimes people in that area may have the thought process of, well, she's an outsider. She wants to just do things, the way that they do it where she's from. But what's so wonderful is that I'm hearing you say, no, let's all join hands across the state of Georgia and bring a fresh energy and synergy so that we can really change some of the battles we've been facing for years in and years out. And I love to hear that. So what about you, Kevin? Because you're right there in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, first of all, I like what she said, because I think a lot of times, whether it's in Atlanta or Augusta, whatever, we get so caught up in tradition or how it always been, and at times we need to step out our comfort zone and do something different. And be something different, it could create a different change. So when she said bring a different energy and different synergy, that really resonated with me, because I think a lot of times we need that new burst of energy to create the change that we need to change in our communities. And I wanted to ask you, because I know Augusta is a rising city, because I hear a lot of people now, especially in real estate, they're not it's it's saturated for real estate agents to try to make a great career in Atlanta. So now I see a lot of people going to Augusta
Yes.
to build their career, and also because it's a lot of things building up in Augusta. So what would you want to say you want to do to help Augusta as they transform to a bigger city?
So you're right. We have cyber. Cyber is really big here. We have some other commands. We have the military installation here. The movie industry is they
Mm-hmm.
filmed. They've shot some several films here. They're looking to do more business here. So I want to make sure that not only Augusta um, has the opportunity to benefit from some of these big corporations and companies that are coming or that are looking to do business in Georgia. Certainly, Augusta is going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the trajectory of how the city is moving. So it's going to grow. But I want to make sure that some of the outer lying areas, have a voice at the table
Mm-hmm.
when these big corporations and companies are talking about coming into Georgia. That these some of these other rural areas that have the land, they have the space to hold factories and plants and different types of things, that they're not forgotten about. Augusta's going to grow. We're gonna overtake. We're gonna overtake the ATL. We're gonna be bigger than the ATL after a while.
Yes.
But
So
yeah,
so we're talking about, and Augusta is, Augusta gets a lot of media attention and things of that nature. But what I'm hearing you say is not just Augusta, but we're talking about places like Evans and Martinez. Some people call it Martinez, Harlem, and Grovetown, and places like that, and even up to Aiken and North Augusta. You're pushing for these areas as well, and even some areas I haven't even mentioned, that you want to help them help themselves, just build and be better and have more access to doctors and more jobs and things of that nature. So I love that, because you're coming from an all inclusive process of, hey, how do we get Evans and Martinez and Harlem and Grovetown and Aiken and North Augusta and all these other places, in Hephzibah, where I used to live, all these other places incorporated to help them shift from where they are, which in many areas is not such a good place to be when it comes to healthcare, but to help them make a positive shift so that healthcare can get better, living conditions can
yeah,
get better, and so
absolutely. I think we have the potential to have a water park. People
yes,
travel to Statesboro. I believe it's Statesboro that has a water park. We shouldn't have to travel to Statesboro. We have land. We have there's enough opportunities and places right here around in this area where we can build our own water park.
yes,
I believe that we travel 2 hours away to go to the Tangier outlet. We need to have an outlet right
yes,
off of I-20, somewhere between Thompson and Grovetown. We have the space, we have the capacity to do things like that. So it's just getting people to stop trying to hoard and keep all of the funds and the resources in their own pocket. There's more than enough wealth to share, but we need to start thinking about those places and helping to reignite, to help them ignite and take flight, um, and be economically more charged for growth and development. Absolutely.
awesome. So we have another question for you. So sometimes when ladies move into government, sometimes they are expected to look a certain way, be it Caucasian, Latino, or have hair running down their back and be light skinned. You bring something different to the table. So There may be people that may say you you are not in the cookie cutter mode. You are different. So what would you say to people who say we need something different and I'm going to vote for her brains, not for her looks?
That's what I want. I was asked the question today in a news interview. It was posed to me that that most of the men in this arena are male Caucasian men. Me being an African American woman, do I believe that that's going to give me an advantage? I believe it was words to that effect. And what I responded to that question was, I do believe that if when I win this seat, I will
Yes.
be the first African American woman to serve in this capacity. And certainly that's a privilege and it's an honor, but it's not what I want people to see me and view me as. I want people to vote for me because of the skills that I have, the experiences that I have, and what I can bring to the table. I've had people tell me, you shouldn't wear your twist. You need to. I like that picture where your hair was straight. You should wear that because people are not going to respond to you if you have your twist in your hair. And so, if you're not a black woman, you don't understand the struggle of what we have to deal with and go through with our hair. I'm having some issues with alopecia right now, and I'm not afraid to say that publicly. But I said that to say this, I'm not going to conform to what people perceive or think I should look like or how I should wear my hair. I'm going to be me. I struggled for many years with how I looked. There was a time where I didn't like me, I didn't love me, and how dare me, uh, tell God He made a mistake in who He made me. And so I resolved that issue a long time ago, and I am confident in who I am. I not only like me, I love me. Kirk Franklin has a song that says, "I like me, you don't like me. I love me. You don't have to like me." So I certainly know how to carry myself. I know how to be professional. I know how to conduct myself in certain situations. But I'm not going to change the way I look. If I want to wear my hair straight, it's because I want to wear it straight. If I don't want to wear my twist, then I'm going to wear my twist. It doesn't change what's inside of my brain. It doesn't change what's inside of my head. So focus on what's coming out of my mouth and not what's on the top of my head, but
Right.
it's what's inside of my head that's producing what's coming out of my mouth.
Right.
Uh,
But also, if I may, also let me say this, and I just chimed in and said I love your transparency. And I think oftentimes we, as people of color, to make it in any arena, we often try to be so malleable and change to meet whatever it is that we're trying to do. And sometimes there's a falsehood there. But what I'm hearing you say is, look, I'm not I'm not in the circus, okay? I'm bringing forth the information that people really need to have a more wholesome and complete life. And in order for me to do that, I have to be me. And I've seen you in many different arenas because I followed some of your posts and things like that, especially when you were in the DC area and with a lot of the other lawmakers and seeing some other things that you've done. But one thing in particular to me stood out. I know that you were on the road most recently and you went to have a meal. And when you went to have that meal, you came across someone who was homeless. And when you came across that person who was homeless, you invited them to have a meal with you. And when you went into the restaurant, the people in the restaurant began to look at you like really weird. And I think even a person came up to you and said, "You're not going to invite him to eat with you, are you? He's dirty." And you said yes, and please take his order, and I'm going to pay for whatever he would like to eat. And you then had a candid conversation with this person that I would imagine hundreds of people walked by that day, didn't even say hello to, didn't even, acknowledge that he was a spiritual being having a human experience. But you took the time to do this. And I know you had your mother with you, and you know how our moms and our dads are. Be careful, because right, we live in a time where we have to be cautious. But instead of you judging this person, um, and you talked about welcoming people to the table, you actually are living this. You welcomed him to your table, and it wasn't for a vote because had no idea who you were.
None.
It was just because you were really living what you say, that proceeds from your brain, out of your heart, and out of your mouth. So can you share a little bit about that with us?
Wow. Yeah, I'm literally in tears. That was such a moment for me. Uh, you told the story, and when we were eating in a buffet restaurant, and in those restaurants you can't take a plate with you. If you
Right.
don't eat it, they throw it away. He didn't finish his food, so I said, I'm going to ask the manager if you can take your food, if he'll make an exception. And when I went over to the manager and I said, hey, I'm just passing through, he's sleeping on the bridge tonight, and I want him to have dinner tonight, can you make an exception? And the manager said, I watched you from the time you came in the door. He said, and most people will give them money or have them put their food in a container and run them away. He said, but you invited him to your table. You talked to him. And I told him what I said earlier, life can happen to any of us. Just like that, in a moment, any of us, our lives could change. That could be my brother, that could have been my father, that could be one of my children. And I would hope that at their lowest point in life, that someone would take the time to not just give them natural food, but to give them spiritual food, to encourage their heart, to speak life into them. And I know his life is not going to be the same. Mine wasn't the same. I cried for a few days. And I shared it on Facebook again. I said, look, I don't want any fanfare. I didn't even take a picture. I didn't do any of that. But I wanted people to know that it's not enough to just give people your money.
Right.
Sometimes you have to stop
And listen.
And make that connection, because that's what you did. You made that human and spiritual connection with that person.
And to me, it's not just even that situation. I just think in general, I think a lot of people just want to be heard, and we in such a hustle and bustle mentality that we don't, create the time to listen.
Yeah.
And listen, to be that ear, and then like you said, be that spiritual light for that person.
Yes.
And so if we take more time and try to listen first, a lot of times we, and especially right now in the political arenas, everybody talk about how their moral values are, but your moral values is shown when how you treat other people.
Yeah.
So then, therefore, you showed your moral values by how you treat that man. And you saw the moral values of other people because they was cringing and looking at you crazy because you was doing what you supposed to do as a human being.
As a human being, yeah.
And I think that's what we mess up at, because we put people in boxes and not understanding these are human beings first. And whatever the label you put on it, that's secondary. But her first, they're human beings. So you will hope that we all treat each other as human beings, how we want people to treat us as a human being.
Yeah.
Very well said, Kevin.
Yeah. Very well said. So those of you that are with us tonight, we thank you so much for being with us. And if you are enjoying what Mrs. Smith said, please put a number 3 down below. Put a number 3 down below. And if you have any questions, please let us know. And we have a comment for you. And Angela out of DC said, people want to be valued as a person. And you did that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for doing that. And that takes there's a lady, she's an author, her name is Jennifer McNeil. She's the author of Stripe, Strength, and Lipsticks, and she's been one of our guests on this show. And she is a former um,
Man,
I want to say
sorry.
Command Sergeant Major, whoa, right?
Cool.
She talks about intestinal fortitude. And that's what you showed that day. And it takes intestinal fortitude to really be in government and be in politics and really do what you say you're going to do and be about what you say you're about. Because it's more than just talking the talk. Because you are walking the walk when people don't even know who you are. You're
Mm-hmm.
doing it.
Right.
And so that's phenomenal.
Because that shows that's to show to me your authentic self. Because
Yes.
you're not doing it for the votes. You're not doing it for the likes. You're not doing it for any of that. You're doing it because this is genuinely who you are as a person. And so therefore, someone like me, if I was in your area, I would be somebody I want to vote for. Because if you
Exactly.
do that for someone that's not in your area,
Yep.
then I know you will go come to bat for me in my area.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. So those of you that's with us, please go ahead, start a watch party. Get this message out across the land. And I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're overseas or here in the United States. Every ear needs to hear this message of compassion, this message of power, empowerment, and enlightenment, because we've touched on some fascinating topics today here with Ceretta A. Smith. Her middle name is Anita. So if you see her on the ballot, make sure, bam, you hit that one right there and check her out because she's on the road. She's tireless and she's doing things that she can help people in Georgia as well as in other places in the United States live their best life, have the best experiences when it comes to medical care, health care, I should say, which is the same, but health care, just and where you live and who you are and where you're from, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter what color you are or what language you speak because her language is universal and her language is she just wants to help yourself ignite and take flight. And like Kevin always says, help you be the best you that you could be unapologetically.
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 Yes, yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
So
So
what?
Kevin, I know that Kevin always is doing like the most to try to help men of color to
Mhm.
have the knowledge they need to get out there and vote and be their best self. So Kevin, what would you tell our male viewers that's out there, as well as our female viewers? But I'd love to hear you start with the male viewers as far as getting out voting, why it's important.
It's important because if you don't vote, you can't. If you don't vote, you can't complain. Period.
Yes.
I love it.
Period. Period. If you don't vote, you can't complain because you're part of the problem.
I love it.
And so, and
Wait a
so,
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait. Could you say that again?
if you
Because I want to
don't,
make sure everybody hear it.
if you don't vote, then you're part of the problem, and then therefore you can't complain. At the end of the day, as men, we got to be the leaders that we are called to be. And if we vote, then we have our family come behind us, they'll follow suit and vote as well. So this is our chance to stand up and be the men, be the kings that we are, and take lead and show the community, show the world who we are, and let's be accounted for. If because we can't keep on complaining about they don't account for us if we're not being there to be counted for. So please go out there and vote. My men, take the leadership role and step out there and vote. Ladies, be the women that you are and go out and vote. Kids, if you're 17 and a half, please get registered and please vote. Because at the end of the day, if you don't vote and it doesn't go your way, you can't complain because you did not exercise your right to vote.
Good stuff. That's
And
right.
so, how would they pronounce your name, Mrs. Smith? How would they pronounce your name?
Ceretta.
So, it's Soretta? Is that right? Can
That's
you
right.
say it again?
Ceretta.
Kevin, can you say it?
Ceretta.
And I'm saying Soretta. And I'm saying that because a lot of times we get to the polls, or we have such busy lives, and many of us do. And sometimes a name can escape us. But if we say it enough, if we see it enough, right, we just might remember it and put what we want to put in action.
Absolutely.
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 So great. So Kevin, I gotta tell you, man, you just phenomenal. Because when I
Absolutely.
told you about her, you was like, yes, of course, let's bring her on.
Thank
Because
you.
he is always trying to open a platform for people to really get the knowledge that they need. And a
Hmm.
lot of times we don't vote and we don't follow people because we don't know who they are, because sometimes we move in different circles.
Right.
But Kevin was like, yes, let's bring her on. And Kevin, I got to ask you this.
Hmm.
As an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
as a man of color, and just let me just say this, as a man, because it's a total different, men vote differently than women.
Hmm.
So as a man, what do you look for in a candidate that you want to vote for?
Um, integrity.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I'm all about being authentic.
Mhm.
I don't want you. I'm not. See, I'm not the. I don't want you to come to the churches to try to get my vote, and you only come to our church when it's time for that. So then therefore I'm
Yep.
not going you going I'm crushing you out the list anyway because that's not authentic. You just here just to try to get my vote. It's other ways you could do it, but by getting
Kevin,
my
you just got a thumbs up. You just got a thumbs up from Daisy up in North Augusta. As
I
soon as
you
you
know
said what you said.
I just be your truly authentic self. You know, if I was in that area, this conversation today, you have won me over.
Thank you. Wow. Wow.
As
Wow.
a black man, you have won me over based on what you said today.
Wow.
You know, you know, you I think a lot of times when we go through like politics, we forget that we are people. We are servant leaders.
Yes.
There you go.
We forget that we are servant leaders, and how can we be a service to our fellow
Yes.
man in our community? And maybe because it's the fact that you was a veteran, all that, but you still put yourself as a servant leader first.
Yes.
And how can you be a service to our community? And I think a lot of times that is what we are missing. Right now it's hard because I just see a lot of times, you know, they get into these offices and it's a form of being a celebrity.
Mm.
So they more in love with
Yes.
being a celebrity and actually being a servant leader.
Mhm.
So then,
Wow.
therefore, I need you to show me if you go. Are you more into this for the title and the celebrity, or are you in it for me for real, for real?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And that's, it's important to have people around you who, can pull your coattail,
Hmm.
Yes.
who will tell you the truth, who will give you those reality checks and say, hey, hold on, remember who you are.
Right.
So it's important to have, because I think we're all susceptible to falling into that
Hmm.
that pit.
Right.
And
Yes.
so
And
I
see,
like to
and, and,
keep people around me
and
that.
what I liked what you said was you're going to be you and you're going to fight your fight regardless. And for me, I need to hear that because when
Yes.
you're watching, and I try not to watch a lot of the news stuff because it just it kills my spirit. But it's a shame that you have people who you voted for to protect you and make help to serve you, and they really only trying to protect their job.
Absolutely.
So they so
Absolutely.
they making decisions that's not in best for us, but in best for them to maintain their job. And so then therefore I wouldn't even want you
Yeah.
because you're living in a state of fear because you fear to tell
Yes.
the truth because if you tell the truth, you fear that you're gonna lose your job. Then
Yep.
I wouldn't want you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I experienced a lot of that as a union president. I literally, I lost promotions. I ultimately had to, retire early because when it came time for them to send me back to work, I knew what the consequences were going to be. I knew what the outcome was going to be. But I also knew that God had a purpose and a plan for me and that he was going to take care of me no matter what happened. And so people were just, you're leaving. You're going to leave your federal government job. Yes. Um, oh my God. Well, what are you going to do? And at that time, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had faith and I trusted that he had a purpose and he had a plan. And so here I am. And I tell people, I'm not in this for the money. A U.S. senator makes almost $200,000 a year. A state senator makes about $17,000 a year.
Yes.
So, and I believe there's a method to that madness. I believe that the salary for a state senator is so low to deter
Yes.
what they would consider, everyday, ordinary, average people. Because let's be honest, the average person cannot live off of $17,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the fame. And I think when I was talking to Lotus before, I told her, it's a calling. It's really a calling. Servant leadership is a calling.
It
Uh,
is.
Yes.
Jesus
It
said that he didn't come to be served, but he came to
to
serve.
serve, and I
And
think
so,
it's not made for everyone. Because when you are a servant leader, a lot of times you have to make decisions that's not the popular decision. So like you knew you was there to serve your union people, and so you did it how you supposed to have done it. And a lot of times, like with that could have jeopardized your career,
yeah,
but that's what you're supposed to do.
right,
You
Right.
know what I'm
Right.
saying? You'll have people who like, that's their job, but they're not gonna do it to the best of their ability because they're
right,
scared that if they do it to the best of their ability, they're gonna lose their job. And
right.
they rather
Yes.
keep their job and not protect the other people who they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to protect. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on tonight and giving me, your platform. I appreciate it. I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you.
Um, and
So I want to give you a chance to give your parting shot. What you want all of us to know, what you want all of us to hear, how you gonna leave us. You already motivated us and inspired us, but how can
Yes.
you do one more time something that's gonna leave us and say we going to support you. If I don't live in that area, I'm gonna send this to all my friends in that area so they could support you.
And
um,
also to your folks, you've got folks looking at you from New Jersey, from just all over the country and overseas as well. So I just wanted to tell you that with so many names I can't mention before your parting thoughts, but I've got so many thumbs up and so many names, and I just wanted to let you know that.
thank you. Thank you so much. I think in closing, what I want people to understand is because I keep hearing this theme that my vote doesn't matter. Why vote? My vote doesn't matter. It's not going to make a difference. And what I want to say to people that if your vote doesn't matter, if your vote is not so important, then why are they doing everything that they can to keep you from voting?
Right.
Why are they purging rolls? Why are they trying to pass legislation to make it almost impossible? Why are they closing polls if your vote doesn't matter? And so your vote does matter. And there's nothing more important than I can tell anyone who's listening, who is in the United States of America, or if you're outside of the United States of America and you have the right to vote in this country. This year, 2020, is more than just about this year. We not only entered into a new year, but we entered into a new decade. And so the trajectory of the elections this year are not only going to impact 2020, but they're going to impact the next 10 years of our life. So please check your status. Make sure you're registered to vote. Take your family members. Encourage your pastors to talk about these things. Talk to your neighbors. And don't forget about the census. Census are our dollars for our community. Don't say, oh, it's just another piece of paper. I'm not going to. No, these are dollars that will provide programs and services for our communities. People died. They gave their lives. They sacrificed a whole lot for us to have the right to vote. Let's make our ancestors proud. Let's continue their legacy by getting out and voting.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you. Lotus, you got any words for us?
Yes, my words are yielded to Senator Smith. Can you please tell us, we know the early voting starts March 2nd through March 20th. Can you tell us how they can vote for you and where to find you?
So currently I won't have a primary. I may have a primary. I won't know that until the 6th of March. But as it stands now, I do not have a primary. Primary is the 19th of May for Georgia. So you can vote for me on November 3rd here in the state of Georgia. Ceretta, middle initial A, last name Smith. And if you should happen to have a senior moment or a brain freeze, remember the show Beretta, or remember the car Beretta. Instead of a B, put a C, and you'll have me, Ceretta.
Awesome.
Any parting shots for you, Lotus?
Thank you so much, Kevin, for all you do. You continue to just explode week after week and day in and day out. And for our viewers, please don't forget that Kevin is getting ready to start something magnificent with the millennials. We're going to be doing a workshop in Atlanta, Georgia. That's coming up. He's also going to be on a tour, a spin tour. You guys know he is like the paragon of fitness with spinning. He is the instructor. If you want to spin and get your body right, make sure you see Kevin. He's amazing. Also, we are going to Africa in September, and Kevin is leading the charge for our fitness in that way, helping us to eat right and get our bodies tight. And all I can say is thank you, Kevin, for letting me talk about the Guinness Book of World Records. No and problem. Thank you to Robert J. Moore for our new book. It's a #1 international bestseller, The Magnetic Entrepreneur. I appreciate it. And don't forget to see Mr. Unstoppable Terrence Lethbridge, because from what I understand, Mrs. Ceretta Anita Smith will also be on the Terrence Lethbridge, Mr. Unstoppable show as well.
Absolutely.
I want to say, first of all, thank you to Mrs. Ceretta Smith for being on our show and just being a bright light for us today. Not just selling herself as a politician, but selling herself as a great human being. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we need to focus on more importantly, is us as human beings first, and then our titles second, and then, because that's what's more important. To you, Lotus, I just want to say thank you and congratulations on your achievement. That is remarkable. I'm extremely proud of you.
Yeah.
And I would not have it no other way than for you to showcase it on the show, because you have been helpful to us with the show as the show has expanded and went overseas, international. So of course you had to tell the world what you did on the show. So I really appreciate you. I commend you. I'm proud of you. if those who could see me could see I have on a hoodie and it says obesity. 2 weeks ago, I was honored enough to be interviewed in a documentary about obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And so we were working on that, and one of my fellow co-hosts, Erica Conklin, we both were interviewed for that. So as I find out more information about when it's going to be, I will let you guys know. After that, I want to say that we just have a lot of things coming in along the pipeline. Actually, Saturday I will be in Somerville,
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina. I'm going to be on the Logan Power Show,
Yes.
and so my taping is at 7 o'clock. So as I find out about the show itself, I will definitely let you guys know how y'all can watch it and all that kind of good stuff. So
Nice.
so continue to support me, Lotus, and Ceretta as we use our platforms to be an inspiration and a motivation to our community, to the world, as we inspire people to be the best version of themselves, mind, body, and spirit, unapologetically. So, with that being said, this has been the Wellness Architect Show. Be great, be authentic, and we are out. Peace. Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Lotus.